We're joined every Wednesday on Ottawa Today by Elliot Tepper, Carleton University political science professor. He usually joins us in studio to talk about world events. This time he is actually traveling the world and joins us from Tokyo. Elliot, good morning.
Good morning, Mark.
Tell us a little bit about your trip there, because I understand you were diverted by a typhoon. Is that true?
Mark, I have been through the eye of a storm. It was a monster typhoon, and my plane, which was supposed to land me in Tokyo, ended up taking me to South Korea, where it was lovely and calm and clear. But Tokyo was very badly battered by it. On the other hand, it was very fast-moving, so it moved in and did its thing and moved on out. So by the time I landed one day later, losing a whole day of interviewing, it was quite nice here.
Okay, and tell me a little bit about the purpose of your trip. Why are you in Japan?
The government of Japan, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, quite unexpectedly, just rang me up one day and said, would you like to go? We have a visitors program. So I'm here with another political scientist, just the two of us. We are, at our own request, seeing an awful lot of people related to defense and security issues, along with taking in some of the cultural aspects of Japan, which we're also enjoying.
All right, so let's talk about how the Japanese are coping with and dealing with the current state of play around North Korea, around China, around America. Tell me what you're hearing from people on the ground there. What's their perception of everything?
We got here just after a national election, which returned the governing party to office, actually with another resounding two-thirds majority, which was somewhat unanticipated, but the opposition was quite fragmented. We're told that the North Korea issue actually was a central factor in the election, that security issues were very important during the election, and the government convinced enough voters with a fragmented opposition that they should be returned to power. So that gamble worked out. One of the issues is revising the Constitution of Japan, which, as you may know, is a peace constitution, essentially imposed on Japan at the end of the Second World War, but which has been taken to heart by the Japanese. Article 9, essentially saying Japan will never go to war again, has been subject to internal debate here for a long time. It factored in the election. Japan now has a self-defense force, which is quite potent, and it has operated only once outside of the immediate neighborhood to help fight pirates in Somalia area. So what would be the future military role of Japan was one of the latent and sometimes overt issues in the campaign. Now the government has said they're not going to, this is all just emerging as you and I are talking basically. The government has said, no, we will not revise the Constitution to eliminate or change Article 9, which would lead to an enormous domestic debate. There's a commitment in this country to pacifism, having suffered from nuclear war. So we will, however, enshrine in the Constitution respect for the military, a role for the military in the Constitution, and that's kind of the state of play at the moment.
All right, and this election has brought back to power the guy who some people perceive as Donald Trump's golfing buddy, right?
Yes, and they are expected to play golf when Donald Trump lands here. The two of them get along very well. The question, of course, domestically here is how close do you want to be to the American president? But the salience, the importance, the significance of the alliance with America, the defense treaty with America, I think has gone up. I'm picking that up while I'm here. There's perhaps during long periods of relative peace, there was some concern about all these Americans look around and do they really have their nuclear stuff under control? Remember, this country will not permit nuclear weapons of any type on its soil. That includes having American ships with nuclear capability docked under this defense treaty at various ports here. And so that was a domestic contentious issue. Now there's more salience among the defense people. I don't know how widespread it is in the general public. Let's be sure that anchor of the security, the American alliance, stays firm. But remember that Donald Trump has been one who's doesn't seem to like alliances all that much, traditional alliances. And during his campaign said very dismissive things about alliances, including, why doesn't Japan and South Korea just go nuclear? Look after themselves. We don't have to look after them, that kind of attitude. But General Mattis, the defense secretary, is also in the neighborhood, I think, this week. And I think he's quietly being very reassuring. Don't worry, America will always have Japan's back.
What's your sense of how worried people are about the situation in North Korea? You were briefly in South Korea, but in Japan itself, is it a preoccupation?
I don't think day to day among the general public. I've not seen any polling on it, and we're not out and about talking to the general population much. We're going from interview to interview. But what I'm picking up is indeed a lot of apprehension, more apprehension among the specialized people we're dealing with in defense and security issues, and just people who deal with the security of the country generally. So, yes, this is seen as a crisis. It's also seen as a crisis that Japan has to deal with, but given the state of its own defense forces, there's no way it can deal with North Korea on its own. So the importance of the alliance goes up. I picked up something here, but I picked it up also from a Korean source that is quite startling, Mark, that I'm almost reluctant to launch it into the air here on air in Ottawa. But one of the possibilities is that a deal could be reached that would be between America and China and North Korea, saying, please get rid of your ICBM, your intercontinental ballistic missile capacity. That is, remove the threat to North America, to the American homeland. And after that, we will be a lot more lenient in other areas. That is, a deal would be made to protect the U.S., but would leave both Korea and Japan in much greater peril, facing the de facto accepted nuclear state in North Korea. Now, I'm reluctant to launch this out. This is a muttering I've heard only very mildly. It is not, repeat, not a central issue here.
Right.
But I see it as a real possibility.
So, again, if you're looking at this from an American perspective and from a nationalist perspective in the United States, it takes care of the threat to America, but it allows North Korea to establish a nuclear program that could be a threat to Japan and South Korea and others in that region without threatening the United States.
Precisely. As usual, you put your finger right on it. The intermediate range missiles that North Korea has already demonstrated, assuming they can have nuclear warheads, they're a threat already to Japan. They don't have to have an ICBM developed in North Korea, or for that matter, South Korea is also under threat. So the neighborhood could end up under greater threat if America looks after its interests only. And I think that'll probably be one of the quiet parts of the conversation behind the scenes when, as you may recall, Donald Trump is going to visit the region early next month. He's going to be coming to Japan, to South Korea, and to China. And China's leader was just anointed. Xi Jinping is now the paramount leader with no opposition. So you and I have talked about this at the time. There's a real chance that now with this party Congress behind him, Xi Jinping is free. He's able to move in ways that he did not feel free to move until now. Where that shows up, we don't know.
Right. This was the party Congress that just took place where the leadership
Yes.
comes together, and basically he's emerged from that with his power really consolidated and solidified, right?
Not only that, enhanced.
Yeah.
I mean, he's now placing himself in the pantheon of great leaders of China over, historically, including he's equating himself to Chairman Mao, the founder of the Republican
Right.
Communist state there. So this is a much more emboldened China. They, in turn, are going to be pressed by America to do something, even more so than in the past. We're going to have a more aggressive, a more assertive, a more self-confident China, and how that factors into the security situation remains to be seen.
We've been hearing about the prospect of nuclear war a lot since Donald Trump started this showdown, this standoff with Kim Jong-un. It's still, I think, in North America, still a bit of an abstract notion. Does it feel more real when you're that much closer to North Korea?
One of the central realizations one has when you do something like what I'm doing is that an abstraction for North America is a very real manifestation here. This is reality where I'm sitting, and it's not abstract at all. And I think really our audience and across North America, we should accept the fact, internalize the fact that this is a very real, imminent potential threat to the people here and also to the peace and stability of the world.
All right, let's talk more about Donald Trump's visit to that area and maybe just walk us through what you think is going to happen, because this is potentially a really interesting visit. Donald Trump is going to be spending time with some of the people that he has openly criticized and described as taking jobs away from America and taking business away from America and having outsmarted America on the international stage. So what's the dynamic going to be like when he's actually in the region?
Well, what I'm picking up here is nobody really knows, and there's a lot of trepidation. What are the conversations going to be? Keeping in mind that the newly reelected and more comfortable government here under Abe and the Trump administration, Donald Trump, get along very well. They are going to play golf, you'll be pleased to hear. And this is very important because this is where they do a lot of business as well as a lot of bonding. But as to what there's going to be, nobody can tell me, and everybody here is a little concerned about what the conversation will be between Abe and Trump. So if I could put it as a set of choices, not only here in Japan, but also for Korea and in China, is the American president coming to this region to say, I want better trade deals, and you people are taking away from America, and America first, and the populist agenda, the nationalist agenda? Or is he coming here to say, America will continue to be, as it has been, the leader in this region? That is, it's going to continue to play the role that the region wants it to play, that is, South Korea and Japan want it to play, as the dominant power and the political and, in a sense, moral leadership that America has been demonstrated? Or is Donald Trump going to de facto say, I'm renouncing that role, I'm here to talk about trade, and you better treat me better?
It's only a matter of months before South Korea hosts the world for the Winter Olympics. This event is coming up fast, and it's the timing is remarkable given all that's been going on with North Korea recently. That the best winter athletes in the world and some political figures and delegations from almost every country in the world are going to be gathering in South Korea in a matter of months. Is that going to impose any sort of timetable on things? Is it going to change the dynamic between the United States and North Korea? Is it going to escalate things? What do you expect from that? Again, we have a lot of unknowns. North Korea did something very interesting last week, which was nothing. That is, during the Party Congress, Xi Jinping's ultimate moment, North Korea behaved itself. Whereas in previous events, big conferences that China was hosting to say, hey, we're leaders in the world, North Korea deliberately and provocatively fired off missiles and did other things basically to rain on their parade. We don't know how that dynamic will play out. If there's a large American delegation going to South Korea as part of the Games, will there be a temptation by the North to do something to rattle the nerves of the region? Will China say, we got a lot of people there as well. We don't want you to, we just don't know how that's going to factor in at this moment. But keep an eye on it. You're quite right to say, watch out. All right, and just before we let you go, Elliot, I know you're still keeping an eye on things that are happening in other parts of the world, even as you travel in Japan and get a much closer look at what's going on there. Yesterday, a couple of Republican senators in the United States, Bob Corker and Jeff Flake, had some criticisms of Donald Trump. Donald Trump shot back at Bob Corker on Twitter. And Jeff Flake said he's not running in the next election. He delivered a blistering attack on Trump. Does any of that mean anything, do you think? Are there fault lines within the Republican Party that are now being more exposed than ever before, or is this just going to play into Donald Trump's narrative that he's in Washington to take on the establishment, and that includes the Republican establishment?
Well, Jeff Flake, it hasn't been widely advertised, had a 93% voting record voting with Donald Trump. So he has been a supporter of the actual agenda of the Trump administration, and yet he's now saying he's not going to run. So what this does is begin to clear out party stalwarts for what could be, and you and I have talked about this in the past, what could be a truly epic struggle within the primaries. Whoever pays attention to primaries, Mark, but the primaries in the Republican Party and the primaries in the Democratic Party are going to be unusually momentous, because what we have in the case of these establishment Republicans has been a denunciation of the Republican president, and the Republican president is saying, well, I'm just going to clear you guys out. Bannon and I, he doesn't say this, but Bannon and I are going to get rid of you and create a Trump-Bannon Republican Party. And that's what this is going to be about in the immediately looming midterm primary nominations.
Yeah, and I wonder if Donald Trump, despite the attack that Jeff Flake delivered yesterday, I wonder if he looks at that and says, great, good riddance. That just clears another spot. Yes. And we're, as you say, Steve Bannon and I are getting what we want, which is to get rid of these people who oppose us within the party.
And we've seen from the polling that Donald Trump is more popular than the Republican Congress, by far. So the Republican Congress is being held in low esteem by the Republican Party, and that's where the action is going to be. So he can now use that as leverage to threaten others in his own party to line up behind him. Meanwhile, you've got the big ticket item for Republicans facing the agenda right now, which is taxes.
Right.
So they desperately want to get this tax bill through, relying on the very Republicans that the Trump people are attacking. So this is a very interesting dynamic, and that tax bill is important because the Republican donors in particular stand to benefit from it.
All right, Elliot, always great to have your perspective, especially when it's on the ground in another part of the world, halfway around the world in this case, joining us from Tokyo in Japan. Thank you for your time today.
Look forward to being back with you next Wednesday.